Welcome to our extensive coverage of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United Kingdom. We'll be, of course, attending some key events, primary among which would also be an event for top CEOs from India as well as Britain at the Gill Hall, which Lord Mayor of London, Alan Yarrow, will be hosting. And he's here with me to talk about his vision for India and the UK. Lord Mayor, thanks very much for taking out the time to speak with us. It's going to be an important event, from a business perspective. What do you expect to happen there? And you'll be hosting the event, so what would be essentially your intent of communicating in terms of the relationships between the two nations?
Tanvir, thank you. The answer is that we are very excited at the fact that your Prime Minister is coming here. I went to India about 11.5 months ago, and we said we'd very much appreciate a visit. We think we're actually in a very interesting stage in our relationship. The City of London, as you know, is the largest international financial centre in the world. And we actually have very, very sophisticated financial products, which actually can support countries which are going through a development stage. We also believe that we can support India in a lot of the financial services that we actually use. We have examinations, accreditations, because the quality of actually the work is terribly important. I also chair something called the CISI, which is Chartered Institute of Securities Investment, and we're now being able to license private wealth managers actually in India. This global qualification is very important because India is going to go a long way. It's only just started. It's just a slumbering giant that's waking up, but it's still encumbered with a number of the historic bureaucracies which are stopping it from moving freely. And I know that Prime Minister Modi is focusing on those to try and free up the economy to make sure it moves faster, and we want to support him to do that.
Right. Expectations riding high from this visit in terms of the kind of deals that could get signed. What is your own view? Do you think that in this visit there would be an intent that would be specified, or do you think actual work will be done in terms of signing the big billion-dollar deals? Numbers that are running are between $10 to $15 billion, especially in sectors of civil, nuclear and defense.
Well, I think the answer is that I'd love to see huge deals done between the two countries because the trade is too small at the moment. It's far too low. But expectation is one thing which India is always very keen to look at. But delivery is always the problem. So I hate to think the expectation is going to outstrip what's actually going to happen. Let's just see how the meetings go today. And whatever comes out of it, I'm sure it's going to be a close association between India and the United Kingdom as a consequence of his visit.
Since you brought up that comparison between expectation and delivery, do you think that the Indian government is on course to deliver the reforms that they had promised? Because that's the big expectation that the world has from the Prime Minister Modi's government.
I'm sure the expectation is high, but one's got to also look at the political situation. He doesn't control the upper house. So the structure of the democracy at the moment in India is probably holding things back from moving as quickly as he would like to happen. I can tell you when I went to visit Narendra back in December last year, it's very clear the government knows exactly what they need to do. And the question is how they can get that through the process and through the system. And we want to support them to make sure that they actually get India into a far leaner, faster and quicker mode, moving the economy forward. It's a very exciting time for India, and we want to be with you.
And what about in terms of opening up sectors for investment? I mean, that's come through over the last couple of days. There have been announcements on opening up FDI in 15 sectors through the automatic route. Which are the kind of sectors that you think bring about an opportunity for investment right now?
Well, it's not just investment, it's also the legal situation. You want to free up the legal structure in India. At the moment, it's quite restricted. And after all, the English law, which you have a very firm foundation in, is something which is understood as being almost the lingua franca, effectively, of the legal system in the world. And so you've got a huge advantage. You've got a large proportion of what's necessary. So I think the legal system needs to be looked at quite closely to make sure that there is some international competitive stuff coming through the door. On top of that, we've already had the insurance bill go through, and that's a good move. We're now looking at how we can support them in opening up the capital markets and making sure the capital markets there support the growth and employment of people in India.
Right. What about taxes? That's also been an area of much debate.
Well, taxes, again, it's what's regional, what's federal, effectively what actually is the local VAT or transaction value-added tax. All these things have got to be looked at, but I know these things are actually on their agenda. The timing of when it's going to happen, I don't know.
But some of these retrospective tax cases which are pending, Vodafone being a case in point, Cairn being a case in point, has been an area of contention. Do you think those matters will be discussed as well?
Well, if they want to encourage FDI, these issues have to be confronted. After all, people look at these things as a risk. If you have a situation like Vodafone and Can have got, and they feel they can't get a clarity of process, which is what they need, and a predictable timeline, then these actually are an impediment to FDI. So clarity and process. I mean, when we look at why is the UK an international financial centre? Because it's speedy, it's fast, it's fair, it's got a predictable process, and there are also proper dispute resolution processes in place. So actually you can go and appeal. These things are not that clear at the moment in India.
Yeah, but the fact is that whoever I've spoken to out here in London has said that India needs to have a stable tax policy in place. They need to have a predictable and a consistent tax regime. Do you think that solutions can be drawn in a meaningful way during this visit? Suggestions can be made on how the government can perhaps stay the course on communicating a stable tax environment from here. I mean, what's happened in the past has happened in the past, but from here going forward, that they can make a commitment to having a conducive tax regime. Sorry.
I'm very confident that Narendra understands totally what actually is necessary to get people to produce foreign direct investment into India, and that is about being able to see what the predictable returns are. And if tax is part of that predictable return, then it's got to be quite clearly set out that they know, going from this point onwards, they know exactly what the process is.
Right. Another grey area has been the visa issue, and do you think that that would also get taken up in this visit? It has been a scenario where things have not really worked out in terms of the students coming to the UK. The numbers have dropped. Do you think that matter can also be resolved? A win-win situation for both can be perhaps signed on?
This is migration is a problem for Europe as a whole. It's not just the UK. I can tell you that we are the users. We absolutely love bringing in bright Indians into this country, in the City of London. We would not be where we are today without a lot of your very bright kids coming to work here. So we are very enthusiastic about encouraging bright young Indians to come here. Because at the end of the day, we need those quality of people to actually make sure we keep ahead of the competition, the global competition. So we're putting a lot of pressure on government to make sure that we can bring people into the City of London. If we aren't ahead of the curve, we won't maintain our position. And we want bright people to keep us there.
Do I take that as a rethink on the visa issue with regards to Indian students?
I am not a person who sets the policy on visas. All I can tell you is that we are constantly badgering the government to make sure we can get access to the brightest people in the world.
Okay. One more aspect that is pretty much influencing or casting a shadow on this trip is the Bihar state elections and the setback that the government has witnessed there, the ruling party, the BJP, has experienced there. Do you think that those matters will also be discussed on how that influences policy at the centre?
I don't know is the answer. Again, this is far too detailed for me, so I can't really comment on that.
Okay. What about some pet campaigns of the government? I mean, we've spoken about Make in India, we've spoken about ease of doing business, and that's also top of the mind for, among a lot of the business community members here. Do you think that there is perhaps going to be a meaningful breakthrough on those aspects, more deals being done? We've not seen a poster boy deal under the Make in India campaign so far. Money has been coming in, but nothing, perhaps to scale up the campaign to another level. And also ease of doing business. The government is aiming at getting into the top 50 on that front. Do you think that something meaningful can happen?
Well, the ease of doing business, they're 132 at the moment. That is not good. To getting into the sort of top 50 is certainly an improvement. But a lot of that's got to do with bankruptcy law. It's got to do with insolvency. There are issues here which are going to be quite difficult to resolve very quickly. But the point quite simply is look at the diaspora in the rest of the world, the Indian diaspora. They're enormously supportive of their mother country. And, of course, they'll do all the best they can to try and support India in its next, Make in India campaign. And, we want to do our bit. We want to increase the trade between our two countries. It's dismally low at the moment, 1.7 billion or something. Yeah. It's nothing. Yeah. So if we can improve that, it does a lot for our relationship. And what you've got to do is open the doors at the top so the business can carry on beneath.
But when you say that needs to be scaled up, a number there would be $22 billion roughly that the UK has invested in India over the last 15 years, the largest G20 investor in India. Can that become like an annual run rate going forward from here over the course of the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's a very good question. If you can tell us what the return is going to be, and we therefore have a predictable tax position, the answer is it might certainly be continuable. Okay. But again, let's get some predictability of what likely returns are, and then that's also to do with bureaucracy. It's to do with the tax take. It's to do with all sorts of issues. I'm not the person who's investing the money, but if I was Vodafone, I would look at the history and see actually how the history dictates what's going to happen in the future.
Has that been troubling policymakers here quite a bit, the taxation issue in India? Because I know I'm coming back to that again, but the fact of the matter is that in most of my conversations, the issue has come up. Are they looking for a strong resolve on the matter?
Well, there are two solutions. One is a historic one, actually what happened in the past, and one is going forward. Quite often when you're investing in a country, it's the direction of travel that's important. In other words, if Prime Minister Modi can set out his stakes in the ground as to where he wants to get to over a certain period of time, people might very well take a risk that actually, as long as they can deliver to those particular delivery points, that's good. But then you start looking at the political structure of what's happening in India between the upper house and the lower house. And my understanding is, as you say, talk about the local elections recently, that these things are bumps in the road to getting to the right conclusion.
One of my guests told me about how GST as well as the land bill are key reforms that the foreign investor community are monitoring. Are those reforms also top of the mind for you, that, if those clearances come by, and it's going to be a tall order given the logjam in Parliament, but that would convince you about the commitment and perhaps the focus there is in the government to push for the hard reforms promised?
Well, it was the insurance bill, it was GST, it was land reform. I understand some of the land reform has already gone through with a change in structure. Yes, these are all very important milestones of delivery. But I mean, the government knows that. They'll do their best. I'm confident they know they need to deliver to those particular targets. The question is when.
Right. Has the delay disappointed you? Did you think that things would have perhaps moved faster, because the government has completed about 1.5 years into office, and given the expectations that the government came into office with, people are already getting a bit restless?
I can tell you, when I was out there in December, Narendra said very clearly, he said, we know exactly what the level of expectation is. What we've got to make sure is that we can deliver to that expectation. And it was far too fast. Expectation was expecting delivery far too quickly. These things take time. And we're patient, we're long-term investors.
Right. And from a 5-year perspective, I mean, we've seen about 1.5 years of the government in office. What do you expect or hope to see by the time this government finishes its full tenure?
I'd hope that ease of doing business will be down well below 100.
Oh, wow, that's an impressive target. What else?
Well, that will mean actually, to achieve that, they're going to be the GST and the planning arrangements would have changed. But again, that means there's going to have to be some smoother predictability of how it goes through the upper house, as I understand it.
And what about India's position as a favoured investment destination? It's already holding out among the BRIC nations. It's already holding out among emerging markets. For the UK, do you think that 5 years down the line, post this visit, the kind of money that will come in would be fairly long-term as well as, high on commitment?
Well, I mean, just have to look at how do you spell BRIC? Brazil, Russia, India and China. Yeah. Well, Brazil's having a tough time at the moment. They're going into recession. Russia's in recession at the moment. India and China are our greatest hopes at the moment. China's still, its growth's come off from 7%, probably like 6.5% at the moment. But I think India has been very consistent. It's ticking along very nicely.
And do you believe that what's happened over the last month and a half in terms of the intolerance debate, pretty much influencing headlines? I have seen a lot of the British media cover that aspect as well. Do you think that will also be talked about during this visit, because it's cast a bit of a shadow on the government's policies at the centre? Investors are a bit wary that now, aside of reforms and growth, there might be a tinge of populism that may come by in the government strategy. Is that something that you would want clarification on?
Listen, I'm a commercial person, right? I do business. We don't put ourselves in a position of directing as to how people should manage their own political structures in their country. It's an Indian problem. We all have our own problems, actually, and I'm sure India will find the right answer.
Okay, so, Lord Mayor, before we wrap up, just wanted to get a sense of how you look at the big picture between India and the UK, their relations, their long-term trade ties. How do you think this visit by the Indian Prime Minister can change that in a meaningful manner?
I think that both the Indians in the UK and the Brits, effectively in India, are absolutely fascinated at how little business we do with each other. We've got the same legal system, we've got the same language. There's a great history. We're one of the biggest investors in India over the last 150 years. Why aren't we doing more business? So the answer is, there's a degree of frustration, I think, on both sides, that we really do want to do business with each other, and we want to make sure that the processes and systems in place aren't ones which are protectionist. We are very much a free trade nation. India's got to have more confidence in their place in the world, so they actually open up their borders and make sure they feel that they can actually gain from actually bringing IP in from outside. That's the critical point. It's about confidence. You should be a very confident country. You've got a lot to offer. You've got a hugely growing population. The growth is getting very exciting over the next 20 years. And we want to be with you when you actually go through that growth period.
And we hope for the best on that front. Thanks very much, Lord Mayor, for speaking with us exclusively on ET Now.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.